بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة العالمين سيدنا محمد عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So we are reading from al-Fath al-Rabbani wal-Qadir al-Rahmani Sayyid Muhammad Abd al-Jilani radiallahu anhu, the sublime revelation and the divine merciful outpourings, a set of 62 discourses that were recorded over about a year or so out of the 40 years that he spent teaching and engaging and admonishing the people and his students in Baghdad in the middle of the 6th century of the Hijrah. And I read something interesting yesterday. Shaykh Abd, Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi, was born perhaps in the last year, or second to last year, of Sayyid al-Qadir al-Jilani's life in Al-Andalus. And he mentions him in some of his works. And he said that Sayyid al-Qadir is a type of scholar or wali that was given al-hukm wa-tasarruf, which means, has many meanings, but one of the meanings is that he was able to, in an outward fashion, penetrate the hearts of people. So it was his quwwat al-wilaya, it was the strength of his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that caused him to have such a profound effect on many people. People would just come into his presence and be affected. And that is one legacy of al-Irth al-Nabawi, of the legacy of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just as people came into his presence and were greatly affected, even before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would even utter a single word. And this is the kind of power of Islam, I think, where its true power comes from. Prophet ﷺ, he changed hearts, and when he changed the hearts, then the people changed. And then when the people changed, their families changed. When their families changed, the community changes, and then the society changes. And so it's built upon this inner strength. So sort of getting it right with yourself first, as we've seen that the theme throughout the discourses of the Shaykh is pivotal and is essential and is important. Otherwise, if we all try to get it right and try to fix things and so forth, more likely it's going to be based upon our hawa, on our whim, our caprice, our personal inclination, convenience, a myriad of factors. Anything other than that which we hope to be is divine success. We want to have tawfiq. وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلْتُ. وَمَا تَوْفِيقِي إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. Our success is not except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and on him I put my complete tawakkul, my complete reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'm going to begin by reading from the 53rd discourse, right from the top. يقول الشيخ رضي الله عنه وأرضاه وعنكم: لابد من الاختبار والابتلاء ولا سيما للمدعين. لولا الابتلاء والاختبار لادعى الولاية خلق كثير. ولهذا قال بعضهم: وكل البلاء بالولاية كي لا تدعي. ومن جملة علامة الولي صبره على أذية الخلق والتجاوز عنهم. أو الأولياء يتعامون عما يرون من الخلق ويتطارشون عما يسمعون منهم. وهبوا لهم أعراضهم. And I believe this is a hadith: حبك للشيء يعمي ويصم. أحبوا الحق عز وجل فعموا وصموا عن غيره. يلقون الخلق بالكلام الطيب والرفق والمداراة، وتارة يغضبون عليهم غيرة لله عز وجل موافقة في غضبه. هم أطباء قد علموا أن لكل مرض دواء. الطبيب لا يداوي كل المرضى بدواء واحد. هم من حيث قلوبهم ومعانيهم بين يدي الحق عز وجل كأصحاب الكهف. أولئك كان جبريل عليه السلام يقلبهم، وهؤلاء يد القدرة والرحمة واللطف تقلبهم. يد المحبة تقلب قلوبهم وتنقلها من حال إلى حال. دنياهم لطالب الدنيا وأخراهم لطالب الأخرى. وربهم عز وجل لهم لا يبخلون بشيء إذا طلبت الدنيا منهم وهي عندهم بذلوها. وإذا طلب منهم ثواب الآخرة بذلوه يعطون الدنيا للفقراء منهم ويعطون ثواب الآخرة للمقصرين في طلبها يتركون المحدث للمحدث ويتركون المحدث لهم يهيبون القشر لأن ما سوى الحق وجل قشر والطلب له والقرب منه هو اللب. So he says, there is no escape from trial and tribulation, especially for those who make pretentious claims. Were not for trial and tribulation and trial, many people would lay claim to wilaya or sainthood. This is why a certain wise man said, tribulation has been put in charge of saintship so that it cannot be pretended. One of the marks of the wali or the saint is his patience with the insults of creatures and his tolerant attitude toward them. The awliya turn a blind eye to what they see people doing, and they turn a deaf ear to what they hear from them. They make them a present of their honor and dignity. I wouldn't word it like that. I would say they give to them their honor and dignity. So they don't take them to task for what they might see as transgressions against their honor. So they gift it to them. And I believe this is a hadith, even though it doesn't say so here. Your love of the thing makes you blind and deaf. So they love the Lord of truth, so they are blind and deaf to any but him. They relate to creatures with pleasant speech, friendliness, and courtesy, although they are sometimes angry with them out of ghayra. Here he says zeal. I would say not zeal, but a sense of indignation solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in accord with his anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at his limits being transgressed. They are physicians who are aware that for every sickness there is a remedy. The physician does not treat all sick people with one and the same medicine as far as their hearts and inner contents, their ma'ani, are concerned. In the presence of the Lord of Truth, al-Haq, they are like the companions of the cave, Ashab al-Kahf. ويقلبهم ذات اليمين وذات الشمال وكلبهم بأصل ضريه بالوسيط. This is what the verse is referring to. ويقلبهم ذات اليمين وذات الشمال. So when the people of the cave, the Futian, were inside the cave 309 years, they would have had tremendous levels of body sores and skin lesions and things like that if they remained on just one side. So this taqlib, they said, was done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala via the angels, so to turn them over from one side and to the next. So they were before, in the cave in that state, leaving things to al-Mawla, leaving things to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as they were being flipped from one side to the next. That's the metaphor I think he's referring to here. So he says in the case of the latter, it was Gabriel or Jibreel who turned them this way and that, while in the case of these others, yani al-awliya, it is the hand of power and mercy and grace that turns them. The hand of love turns their hearts and conveys them from hal to state. They leave their interest in this world to seekers of this world, and their interest in the hereafter to the seekers of the hereafter, while their Lord belongs to them. So we've seen this theme before, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for them is the maqsad, is the objective, and there's no other objective besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in as much as he promises the hereafter for those people who follow his commandments and avoid his prohibitions, but they see that as a function of their seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what he has promised them. So not to be distracted by al-maw'ud nisyan al-wa'id, right? So not to be preoccupied with what is promised, but to be more occupied with the one who's making the promise, namely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just like they say, the adab of the ni'mah, the adab of the blessing, is to be more concerned with the mun'im, the one who is the creator and the distributor of the blessing, the bequeather, as it were, of the blessing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not the blessing so much itself. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, they used to say about him, كَانَ يَجُزُ النَّعْمَ وَإِنْ دَقَّتْ. He would see every ni'mah as big, وَإِنْ دَقَّتْ, even if it's seen as small by others, because it's the mun'im, right? It's the one who is bestowing the blessing is the important part. So every blessing is big. if you look at from the prism of this is the Mun'im, this is the one who's bestowing the blessing. So if worldly things are sought from them and they happen to have them, they give them freely because it's meaningless to them. If they are asked for the world of the hereafter, they also give it freely because, again, they are preoccupied with the owner of the hereafter, the sovereign of the hereafter, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They give worldly goods to the poor among them and give the world of the hereafter to those who fall short in seeking it. They leave the created, the muhdath, to the created, and leave the creator, al-muhdith, I said that wrong the first time, for themselves. So the muhdath, ism maf'ul, the created, and the muhdith, alladhi ahdathahum, the one who brings them into creation, is the creator named Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They leave the shell because everything apart from the Lord of Truth, from al-Haqq, is a shell. While the quest for Him and nearness to Him is the kernel or the lub. So he's describing a maqam, a very high one, the maqam of ma'rifah, the maqam of wilayah, and these are some of the attributes that they have, sabr ala adayat an-nas. And I think generally this is one of the last hurdles, so to speak, that someone who inshallah is on that path has to cross. It's one of the more difficult ones to deal with, the trouble that people can give one, and their insults, their slights, their seeking something from you, not really for anything that's for your benefit or that goes back to you, but that goes back to them. And we, as a species, as a condition, we naturally seek people's approval, and we naturally seek their validation. We naturally want to be seen and lauded by them, and mentioned in a good way, and not mentioned in a negative way. We naturally shy away from criticism and shy away from slights, and we tend to not want to have relationships with people who we feel don't appreciate us or don't give us what we think to be our due and deference and all that sort of thing. All of those things are very natural inclinations. But the wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're not dealing with people, they're not dealing with the khalq, they're dealing with al-Khaliq, they're dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they're not seeing the mabani, they're seeing the ma'ani. So they're not seeing Tom and Ahmed and Mustafa and Fatima and Yusuf, but they're seeing the creator of all those people. And they're not seeing someone who's hurling an insult at them, but they see a tanbih, a message, a risala from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that says, intabih, right? Wake up, pay attention. This message is for you. Yes, we sent it in different ways. So messages can be sent in what we think to be natural phenomena. So people see like a rainbow or something after a storm. They say, oh, look, that's a sign of God. Yes, that's true. So is the flat tire you got on the way to work. That's also a sign of God. And there's no difference in terms of this was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and this was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this wouldn't have happened except by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so they may not always understand the ma'ani. They may not understand, well, how come I got a flat tire this morning? They may not figure out that part of what exactly the message is, but they know there's a message in it, and they know that this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed, and it couldn't have been avoided, and perhaps there is something that is going to turn me or put me in a direction that otherwise I would have not gone towards had it not been for this particular incident. And that's really the meaning of ibtila and ikhtibar. One of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Khabir, and He's also al-Alim, and He's also al-Basir, and He's also al-Sami'. All of these names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have similar meanings. In other words, that Allah sees everything, right? Allah knows everything, nothing can be hidden. But the ulama also said, if they meant exactly the same thing, then this would be abath, this would be done in vain, it wouldn't make sense. So each name has a particular khususiyah, has a particular specific merit to it, or attribute that can be understood from it that maybe not found in the other names. So they said of al-Qadir comes from al-Khabar, right, and comes from al-Ikhtibar. The word Ikhtibar means to know the news about somebody, to know what they're really made of, what they are, because the Khabar means something that is a hadath, an occurrence, something happened, or a story, someone's telling you something. When they say ليس الخبر كالمعاينة, ليس الخبر كالمعاينة, and we've seen Shaykh said this phrase before. Being told about something, hearing about it, is not the same as seeing it, right? Like what we're saying today, seeing is believing. So you're going to have more of a certainty when you actually see that thing or taste it, or it's palpable, or it's something that you feel is close, versus something someone told you about. So we can call that kind of hearsay, right? Oh, I told you about this thing, it's going to be that way, and we can affirm it and we can acknowledge it and we believe in it, but it's not exactly the same as if I actually see it for myself. So the khabar then is ikhtibar, right? So the khabir means he knows everything also by way of testing you on things. And so he knows how you're going to do on the test, and even before you go through the test, and even years after the test. All of that is known by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the ta'alluq, right, the connection here from the ikhtibar to the khabir is that via the ikhtibar, via the test, then that also is in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah huwa khabir, wa huwa latif, wa huwa alim, wa huwa sami', wa huwa basir. So sami', the one who hears all things, the one who sees all things, and alim, the one who knows all things. All of them have slightly different meaning, different shades of meaning, and it's really the divine names is how we understand the universe, because we cannot fathom and contemplate the Dhat al-Ilahiyya al-Muqaddasa. We can't properly comprehend the divine essence that's beyond our comprehension, and so we are instructed and left to comprehend and think on the divine names and attributes. And the divine names and attributes are the connection between the Qadim and the Hadith. So Sifat al-Af'al, right? Things that are executed and we see them. كل يوم هو في شأن. Every day there's something new that is being revealed to us. So there's Ihya and there's Imata and there's Ikhtibar and there's Ibtila and there is Madalla and there's Ma'azza, and all of these things are functions of the divine names. And so to want to see yourself go from one hal, one state, to the next before its time is due is a type of ignorance, right? It's a type of not intellectual ignorance, it's a type of spiritual ignorance, or what some scholars have said, urjmat al-qulub. Shaykh uses the word fasahat al-qulub. Right, fasahat al-qulub means the eloquence of the heart, the understanding of the heart. The reverse to that, the opposite of that, is al-ujma, which means not understanding. So wanting to be taking from one hal to the next, without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taking you out of that state himself, is a type of spiritual illiteracy or spiritual ignorance. Imam al-Secondary says as much in the Hikam. If whoever desires for something to happen other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed, فَقَدْ جَهَلَ جَهْلًا كَبِيرًا أو جَهْلًا عَظِيمًا. Whoever wants something to be other than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed in the moment for you is a type of jahl, right? Ignorance, and I would further qualify that as a spiritual ignorance. And so, like the metaphor that Mawlana Rumi uses of the guest house, which is sadness and certain emotional reactions to these ikhtibarat, to these trials and tribulations that come our way, we should rather than treat them like strangers who are unwanted, and we try to close the door and keep them out, and kick them to the curb, as it were, don't want anything to do with them. We should treat them as guests. So you invite the guest into your house, you make them comfortable. It would be quite rude to suggest that the guest leave before he's ready to leave. And so you continue to give them what's called diyafa. You be a good host and deal with them, even if it's an unruly guest, or if it's a nice guest. Doesn't matter. You still try to do the best and offer them your diyafa, offer them your hospitality as they stay in your house. So your heart is kind of like that. Your heart is a guest house. So sometimes bust will come in. Sometimes you'll feel inshirah. You'll feel, an expanding of the heart, of the breast, as it were, and a type of, up sort of feeling. And sometimes qabd will come in, and this is more of a down feeling. This is more of the valleys than the hills, and you feel a constriction of the heart. So don't seek to have it leave before it's time, but treat it as a guest, and keep in mind who is the one that sent this guest to you. So really, you are doing on behalf of the one who sent the guest to you. So if you had like a close friend and they said, "Oh, my cousin's coming," and you just show them around a little bit, and just let them stay in your house a little bit. It would really mean a lot to me. And this person who is a friend or a relative of a really close friend of you, so you do it on their behalf. And so for us, all of these things that are coming in, treat them as guests. So yes, you may feel a little bit down, or you may feel a little bit happy, or you may not be too enthralled with this ibtila. You're not too happy that the past 7 weeks of your life you're staying at home and you can't really go out and you can't walk in the park. And okay, that's okay. But treat that state, right, of what we feel like qabd, of constriction, as something that's going to take its course. And the Quran shows us that states are not permanent, right? So many different ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes how the day goes into the night and the night goes into the day. يَطْلُبُهُ حَثِيثًا, right? One seeks the other, like running after it. Or خِلْفَةً, right? One comes after the other. One seems into the other, and the other one goes out. Imata and ahya, so giving life to things that didn't have life, and then they go back. Look at the seasons, the change of day, the change of wind, rain, sun, so forth, cold, heat. So there's no hal that's there. There's no permanent state in this life. And that also means whatever particular state that your heart is in right now, it's not a permanent one. And it's going to go. So that also means if you're in the kind of the up and the happy state and jubilant and so forth, no, that's temporary. And it's going to go. And then when it does go, don't cry over it. Don't lament it. It was meant to be there for a while, and then something else will come, and then it will come back. Right? وَاللَّهُ يَقْبِضُ وَيَبْسُطُ وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. Allah is the one who gives us this qabd, constriction, وَيَبْسِط, right, and bast, وَإِلَيْهِ تُرْجَعُونَ. But the main focus, the main concern should be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's read the next part. عن بعضهم رحمة الله عليه أنه قال: لا يضحك في وجه الفاسق إلا العارف. نعم، يأمره وينهاه ويتحمل أذاه، ولا يقدر على هذا إلا العارفون بالله عز وجل. أما الزهاد والعباد والمريدون لا. كيف لا يرحمون العصاة وهم موضع الرحمة مقام التوبة والاعتذار؟ العارف خلقه من أخلاق الحق عز وجل، فهو يجتهد في تخليص العاصي من يد الشيطان والنفس والهوى. إذا رأى أحدكم ولده أسيرا في يد كافر، أليس يجتهد في تخليصه؟ فهكذا العارف. الخلق جميعهم كالأولاد، يخاطب الخلق بلسان الحكم ثم يرحمهم لاطلاعهم على العلم. فيرى أفعال الحق عز وجل فيهم، ينظر إلى خروج الأقضية والأقدار من باب الحكم والعلم، ولكنه يكتم ذلك ويخاطب الخلق بالحكم الذي هو الأمر والنهي، ولا يخاطبهم بالعلم الذي هو السر. That's the important part. Let's just look at that right now. One of the wise, rahmatullah alayhi, reported have said, no one except the knower or the arif can laugh in the face of the sinner. Not laugh at him, but means can still be nice and gentle, and despite their outward sinning, not to make them feel like they're the worst of the worst. Yes, he gives him commands and prohibitions and tolerates his insulting behavior, and it's only the knowers, the arifun of Allah, who are capable of this. Not so the abstinent, the zuhad, or the ubad. Shouldn't be ibad, should be ubad, the servants, and the aspirants, the muridun. So these are maqams other than maqam al-ma'rifah. So we talked about the zuhad, in other words, purely zuhad, not also arif at the same time, but someone who their maqam is renouncing all that is extraneous and all that doesn't lift their spiritual state. And so they will look at the sinner and say, I'm in zuhd and I renounce these things. How come these people can't do that? What's wrong with them? What's wrong with these people? When you have like this spiritual exasperation all the time, and you say to yourself, what's wrong with people? If that's kind of like your refrain most of the day, then you might be from the zuhad, if you're lucky, or you might be from the ubad, right? The servants who actually their maqam is serving. So here, serving Allah. So they have a lot of tilawah, and they have a lot of dhikr, and they have Quran, and they have all these things. And you see people kind of they make these groups, and they vie with one another. How much Quran did you read a day, and to encourage one another, and this is good. All that is very positive. The maqam al-ubad. But if at the same time they look at others with the eye of holier than thou and pretense and sanctimony, and say, oh, you only read 3 pages of Quran today, we're reading like 30, what's wrong with you? Why can't you get it together? What's going on with you? I mean, why are you so lazy? Why are you this? The maqam al-ubad. Similar to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, of the man who killed 99 in Bani Israel, and the abid told him, no tawbah for you, it's too late. Then he killed him too, and then he went to the arif, or the alim, who told him, of course, tawbah is open to you, because he's looking at him with ayn al-haq. He's looking at him with the eye of the haq, which is the eye of mercy, which is what the Shaykh says here. So, and the muridun are similar. The murid is still trying to get to that place. So he said, how could they fail to treat sinners with compassion when they are the site of mercy, the station of repentance and apology? Right? These sinners, so to speak, the character, khuluq of the knower, partakes of the characteristics of the akhlaq of the Lord of Truth, for he works hard for the deliverance of the sinner from the control of Satan, the lower self, and nafs, and the passions, the hawa. So rather than condemning them to hell, right, or condemning them to, dustbin of sin and iniquity and evil, and those responsible for the suffering of all the people in this world because of these sinners, they look at them at the eye, the same eye that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala look at them at, which is the eye of mercy, right? And if there were no sinners, then who would make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and who would make istighfar? And this is generally the reason that we were created. We were created imperfect from that aspect, so that we may return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in terms of our human condition, that's the way we're supposed to be. We are perfect in the sense in that when we make a mistake, then we're supposed to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they see them as, as a responsibility, as creatures of Allah, and as someone and people who need to be aided and need to be guided and need to be helped, and not to be condemned. So, for he works hard from the deliverance of the sinner from the control of Satan, the lower self and nafs, and the passions and the hawa. And some of the awliya will say, if you're aggrieved by the behavior of someone, you say, oh, astaghfirullah, yani his nafs got the better of him that time, or yani lanatullah ala shaitan, it's the shaitan really like messed things up with us, or his nafs got in the way. And they don't attribute the malfeasance, as it were, to the person, to the that, to the individual themselves. But everybody has a nafs, and everybody has a shaitan. Everybody has their moments, and everybody makes slips, and everybody makes mistakes. That's kind of just how humanity is. And so they don't condemn them because of that, especially on, what would be a single incident or a slip, what we call al-hafa was-zalla. Right? In our culture nowadays, we don't have too much tolerance for that. We're waiting for people to mess up so we can just like cut them off and put an X, unfriend them, not just in the social media world, but unfriend them in real life. And now we have these other, what seem to be pathological behaviors that people talk about, like ghosting and gaslighting, and just like completely removing someone from your life and not even, no explanation, nothing, just like drop them, and then gaslighting and then make them feel like they're crazy, right? And these are pathological behaviors, but we see them they happen a lot and they proliferate, and we live in a very sort of self-entrenched, self-centered, narcissistic existence, and the self has become the new God. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you seen the one who has taken his hawa, their caprice, their whim, as their Lord? And this is the dominant psyche paradigm, as it were, all around us, whether it's in the Western world and even to a great degree the Muslim world. This is where people are. They're just stuck in that. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the insight and the fortitude to look beyond that, then you have a degree of responsibility to others who are not beyond that yet. You need to show them a different path. And the only way really that they're going to listen and engage with that is if you live that different path. You just not just show it to them, you have to live it yourself, and be on a path to get people up and not keep people down. And this is why we're here. This is the whole idea of Islam. And honestly, I don't think life is really worth living outside of that. What else are we going to do with life? Go and Starbucks and have our lattes and eat ice cream and hang out in the park, go home and watch Netflix at night and go to sleep? Or are we here to actually do something? Are we here for ta'mir? Are we here to use the ni'mah, use the blessings we've been given, both ma ظهر منها وما بطن, the outward blessings and the inward blessings, not just to alleviate our own states, but also those around us, right? وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, those who are aqrab, the ones who are closest. Allah made you a neighbor of this person, and made you a colleague of this person, and made you a son or daughter of this person, and made you a cousin of this person. It's not random. These are your charges, so to speak, right? These are the people you are responsible for. And if you have been given so many blessings in this way, then you have to pay the zakat, so to speak, of the blessing. So zakat on your wealth, but also zakat of your soul. So if you have generosity of soul and you have the ability to convey this message to others, then you have to do it. So then the Shaykh, he says, he gives another example. If one of you saw his own son a prisoner in the hands of an unbeliever, would you not make every effort to secure his release? Well, that is how it is with the knower, with the arif. All creatures are like his children. That's the word I was looking for before. He addresses people in the language of the rules of law, al-hukum. Then he feels compassion for them because of his familiarity with knowledge, the ilm, for he sees the workings of the af'al of the Lord of Truth, al-haq, within them. هذا كلام دقيق جدا. This is very precise what he's saying, and it's very, very important. And we've said it, I think, in the previous session. We engage with others and how outwardly we engage with them, and we say, yes, halal, haram, haq, batil, sihha. This is valid, this is invalid, this is true, this is not true. This is you're allowed to do, you're not allowed to do, this is recommended to do. And that language is the language that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us by which to engage ourselves and to engage with others in terms of spreading the da'wah and spreading the message of Islam. But then he says, so that's the hukum. But in terms of your heart, here's the important part. He feels compassion for them because of his familiarity with knowledge. Here means ilm, يعني ilm al-haqiqa. So this is the haqiqa part. The first part is the sharia part. This is the haqiqa. For he sees the workings, the af'al of al-haq within them. Right? So on the one hand, we may condemn their actions, just as we condemn ours, if they're wrong, but within our hearts, that does not preclude us from having compassion for them at the same time. we still have compassion for them at the same time. This was the way of the Prophet ﷺ. He fought people in Badr and he took them as usara, he took them as prisoners of war, but that did not preclude him from having compassion. And he said, if one of you can teach 10 of the people of Medina how to read and write, then you win your freedom. And amongst those people that were usira fi Badr was his own uncle Abbas, who wasn't Muslim at the time, but later on became Muslim, radiallahu anhu. And so, even though he dealt with them with the hukum, they came to oppose the Prophet ﷺ. They came to try to smite Islam from the face of the earth. But even after that, he still had the compassion. How else could his heart be so forgiving to people like Abu Sufyan and Hind bint Utbah, who was responsible for the assassination of his own uncle in the Battle of Uhud and accepted her Islam? How else can you explain that? How else can that be? How else can be the same man who came knocking on the door of Dar al-Arqam, who wanted to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ initially, Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, and then becomes the second Khalifa and one of the greatest people to ever have lived. And the Prophet ﷺ called him al-Faruq, right? الذي يفرق بين الحق والباطل, the one who makes a distinction between truth and falsehood. This was Sayyidina Umar. So how was he before Islam, and then how was he after Islam? And if you don't have the ability to see people, even in their worst state, to be in a state completely different than that, in a better state by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then I would say to you, the da'wah is not for you. Then be from the ubbad, be from the zuhad, be a worshipper, be a servant of Allah, and don't harm others by your pretense and by your judgment and so forth. That's not how da'wah is supposed to work. Da'wah is something, you're in it for the long haul, and you cultivate relationships, and you see people through to it, and maybe it will take a decade. It took 2 decades for some of the people of Mecca to come around to Islam after they knew the Prophet ﷺ, even when he was a child, and even when he was a teenager, and even when he was older, and they knew him as al-Amin, they knew him as the most trustworthy. But despite all of the difficulties he encountered with them, from the boycott they put on him and upon Banu Hashim, his sub-tribe, and they fought him and they insulted him, and they had poets who wrote poems to insult him and his family, and all of these things. Despite all of that, the Prophet ﷺ never wanted to exact revenge on any of them. And he knew that his ummah is unique, not like the previous ummah where revenge was exacted on behalf of the prophets by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when they turned away from their prophets. But he would be the one in his sujood, in al-Baqiyah, and saying, Ummati, Ummati, Ummati. So again, all creatures are like his children. He addresses people in the language of the rules of hukum when he feels compassion for them because of his familiarity with knowledge, ilm al-haqiqah, and for he sees the workings, the af'al of the haqq within them. He observes the emergence of the divine judgments and decrees from the door of the hukum and of knowledge, but he keeps this hidden. Right? We don't want people to make hujjah, ihtijaj bil qadar. We don't want people to say, oh, Allah qaddarani lidhalik. But in my heart, I see that. And so I don't cast blame on the human essence, as it were. I may condemn the act, but I know that people are not just the sum of their acts, right? They can be something different. So what they did yesterday does need not define them of who they are today. Al-Islam yajubu ma qabla, right? Islam yajubu ma qabla. It kind of yamhu, erases that which came before. وَالتَّوْبَةُ كَذَلِكَ. And even tawbah, when you're already Muslim, right? At-tawbah al-nasuh, tawbah that has been accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, also as if it expiates everything that came before. So he addresses them in terms of law, yani al-hukum, sharia, which is commandment and prohibition, and not in terms of knowledge. In other words, as he says here, which is secret, the sir. In other words, ilm al-haqiqah. Ilm al-haqiqah and ha'ula, this is just an instrument of the divine will. The af'al Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the acts of God, are all around us. Every single one of us is an act of God, and all that we do is an act of God. This is the sir, the haqiqah. And this cannot be fully realized and actualized except via this science, which is the ilm of tasawwuf, or ilm tazkiyat al-nafs. You won't get that reading books of aqidah or studying with scholars of theology and aqidah. The reconciliation of between ilm al-haqiqah, as we know it, and ilm al-sharia can only come in this particular discipline, the discipline of tasawwuf. That's why the true shuyukh, they're the arbab, al-ahwal, al-maqamat, and at-tarbiyah. The real shuyukh are the ones who are, they're the ones who are been put in charge of um, the maqamat and the spiritual stations and states and tarbiyah, and trying to help people through their lives, and specifically their spiritual lives, as they get to that point. So it looks like we've run out of time. Alhamdulillah, and barakallah fikum. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you all.